This is the private sitting room for the Royal Princess Anne. She has opened up the room and opened up her schedule to do something she rarely does, conduct an interview with us.
The details of Princess Anne's Australian tour were kept under wraps until the royal touchdown in Sydney this morning.
King Charles was mid-speech when Princess Anne suddenly stepped forward and placed a sealed envelope into his hand. He froze. Cameras zoomed in as his eyes locked on one name written in 1997 handwriting: Diana. The room went silent. His voice collapsed. His posture crumbled. And in front of the world, a king broke in tears as a message hidden for 28 years resurfaced. What was inside that note, and why did Anne choose today? The public breakdown. King Charles, speaking at 11:42 a.m., was halfway through a formal address inside Buckingham Palace when Princess Anne suddenly stepped forward and placed a sealed envelope into his hand. The name written on it, Diana, hit him harder than anyone expected. For nearly 25 seconds, he stood frozen, unable to continue. The cameras zoomed in on his stunned expression as the handwriting pulled him instantly back to 1997, the year everything changed. Those closest to the stage immediately noticed his breathing shift. His fingers trembled, and his posture collapsed in a way that shocked staff who had known him for 40 years. Even microphones positioned 2 meters away captured his shaky exhale as he stared at the envelope. Queen Camilla, watching from the front row at 12 p.m., leaned forward with concern. She knew the moment Charles recognized Diana's handwriting, the past had resurfaced with impossible force. Charles attempted to speak again, but the words collapsed. He skipped 3 lines, stuttered on a simple phrase, and lowered his head as if unable to face the crowd. The king, who had trained for public composure since the 1970s, now stood visibly shaken. Every camera caught the moment his royal mask fell away. His hand tightened over the letter, gripping it like a memory too heavy to hold, but too powerful to let go. When he stepped back from the podium, his eyes were glassy and his body stiff. This wasn't forgetfulness. This wasn't distraction. This was emotional rupture, raw, unfiltered, and undeniable. The letter had stayed hidden for 28 years, but its power had not faded. Charles walked off stage with the envelope pressed to his chest, as if shielding himself from something that had followed him since 1997. And the world saw a king undone by a single name. The king's collapse stunned the nation, but the real mystery was the woman who delivered the letter. Princess Anne had never once broken protocol in her 73 years, yet she chose this exact moment to step forward. To understand why, we must explore her silent, calculated decision. The unscripted moment. Princess Anne, normally the strictest follower of royal protocol, made a deliberate choice on December 2nd, 2025. She waited until Charles was mid-sentence at 11:42 a.m. before stepping out and handing him the sealed envelope. No warning, no announcement, no explanation. In her 50-plus years of royal duty, she had never disrupted a speech. Until this moment. Anne had discovered the letter months earlier while reviewing Queen Elizabeth II's private archive, stored since September 2022. Inside a velvet box, she found the envelope marked in Diana's handwriting from 1997. She didn't consult Charles. She didn't notify William. She didn't inform Camilla. She carried it quietly for weeks. Those close to her said she looked weighed down by the decision almost as if she feared the letter would be buried again if not revealed publicly. What shocked palace staff most was that Anne bypassed every traditional channel. She ignored the private secretary, skipped proper scheduling, and delivered the letter before 500 people. This wasn't impulsive, it was strategic. She ensured the entire world witnessed the handover. She acted independently, something unheard of in decades. Anne knew that once the cameras captured the moment, Charles could no longer hide from whatever Diana had written 28 years ago. Her silence during the handoff was deliberate. She didn't whisper. She didn't explain. She simply placed the envelope in Charles's hand and stepped back. Witnesses say Charles glanced at her with confusion and understanding at the same time, as though he knew this day would come. Anne's action revealed a quiet loyalty, not to protocol, but to truth. She believed Diana's words were not meant for storage. They were meant to be heard. Anne's bold move raised the one question on everyone's mind. Where did this letter come from? To understand the chaos it created, we must go back to 1997, to Diana's final belongings, and to the hidden envelope that remained untouched for nearly 3 decades. The hidden note's origins. The sealed envelope was traced back to August 1997, the final month of Princess Diana's life. After her fatal crash on August 31st, palace archivists collected her belongings from Kensington Palace. Inside a small velvet box, they found an envelope labeled "For Charles," written in Diana's recognizable blue ink script. Somehow, this letter, dated from the same period she traveled to France in 1997, was never delivered. After Queen Elizabeth II's death in September 2022, Princess Anne was granted partial responsibility for reviewing private archives. While examining items stored since the late 1990s, she found the envelope tucked among personal diaries and jewelry. The handwriting was unmistakable. The date aligned with Diana's final weeks, and the emotional weight of the envelope was undeniable. Anne reportedly paused for 30 seconds, realizing the magnitude of what she held. Multiple palace insiders offered contradictory accounts of how the letter was found. One source claimed it was discovered in a jewelry box from 1996. Another insisted it was hidden inside a diary from early 1997. A third believed Queen Elizabeth herself stored it away to prevent emotional turmoil in the fragile months after Diana's death. But every version agreed on one point. No one, not Charles, not William, not Camilla, had ever read the letter. Anne kept it with her for several weeks, struggling with whether to hand it over privately. She knew the monarchy had a long history of hiding uncomfortable truths. She didn't want this message sealed away for another 25+ years. And so she made her decision. Diana's words, locked away since 1997, finally reached the man they were meant for. Now that the envelope had resurfaced, the emotional impact on the king was immediate and overwhelming. But the world had only seen the first crack. To understand the depth of this moment, we now move to Charles's emotional collapse when he realized Diana's voice had returned after nearly 3 decades. The king's emotional collapse. When King Charles stepped away from the podium at 12:03 p.m., the envelope still held tightly in his hand, witnesses noticed a visible change in his expression. His eyes were glassy, his jaw tense, and his breathing uneven. Those who had seen him during crises in 1981, 1992, and 1997 said they had never seen him so emotionally exposed. It was as if time had folded, pulling him back into the hardest chapter of his life. Charles stared at the envelope again, gripping it with the same right hand that once held Diana's in public appearances during the 1980s. His fingers shook as he traced the familiar handwriting, the curved D she always wrote in blue ink. One aide standing 2 meters behind him said he whispered, "Why now?" A question he had asked himself countless times since 1997, but never with such urgency. The letter wasn't just paper, it was memory. Queen Camilla, watching from the side of the stage, instantly recognized the collapse. She leaned forward and whispered to an aide at 12:05 p.m., her face tight with concern. For a woman who spent 18 years rebuilding her public image since their marriage in 2005, Diana's sudden reappearance, through ink and paper, felt like a ghost tearing open the past. Camilla sensed that whatever Diana had written held the power to reopen wounds Charles had spent 28 years trying to close. As Charles walked slowly off stage, the letter pressed to his chest, the audience remained silent. This wasn't a moment he could mask with royal posture or speeches. This was the collapse of a man confronting a message frozen in time for nearly 3 decades. His steps were unsteady, and for the first time in his 76-year life, he looked less like a monarch and more like a man burdened by everything he wished he could forget. The letter had found him, and it had broken him. Charles's collapse was only the beginning. The emotional shock was undeniable, but the deeper question still lingered. Why did Princess Anne choose to hand him Diana's letter in front of the world? To understand this turning point, we must examine Anne's silent motivation and the duty she felt compelled to honor. Princess Anne's silent motive. Princess Anne, who spent 50-plus years serving the crown with discipline, shocked even her closest staff when she chose to hand Charles the letter publicly at 11:42 a.m. She had discovered the envelope in September 2022 while reviewing Queen Elizabeth II's private archive. For 14 months, she wrestled with the decision of whether to reveal it quietly or reveal it truthfully. The moment Charles froze, she showed which path she chose. Anne was known for her quiet loyalty, not dramatic gestures. Yet, those who worked with her during the 1980s and 1990s say she held a deep respect for Diana, despite their differences. When she found the sealed letter dated 1997, she realized it carried emotional weight far beyond a family moment. She believed it contained a truth that should not be buried again. That belief grew heavier over 12 weeks as she carried the letter inside her coat, waiting for the right time. Her decision to bypass every standard protocol shocked royal aides. She didn't tell Charles's private secretary. She didn't inform Queen Camilla. She didn't notify Prince William. She didn't ask permission. Instead, she chose a moment where Charles could not ignore the letter or hide from it. Delivering it publicly ensured it would not vanish into archives again, as so many of Diana's messages had after 1997. She forced transparency through a single action. Anne's bold timing raised one urgent question across Britain. What did Diana actually write? The contents of the letter remained sealed, but theories began spreading within hours. To understand the crisis now tightening around the monarchy, we must explore the possibilities and why each one could reshape royal history. What the note might contain. Speculation about the letter erupted within 24 hours of the footage going viral. Some believe Princess Diana wrote it during August 1997, just weeks before her tragic death on August 31st. Friends recalled she often wrote late-night reflections during that summer, especially while in France. If the letter contains emotional closure, a farewell, or an apology, it would hold overwhelming personal weight for Charles, enough to explain his collapse on stage. Others believe the letter might contain truths Diana never said publicly. She had spoken openly during her 1995 Panorama interview about betrayal and loneliness. A private letter may have carried words she felt too vulnerable to express on camera. Historians say a message dated from 1997 could challenge the palace's long-standing narrative about their marriage, exposing emotional realities hidden for nearly 28 years. The most startling theory suggests the letter contains a warning. Diana told several friends in 1996 that she feared how her story would be rewritten after her death. She often said, "Let the truth speak later." If she wrote a warning or plea to protect William and Harry, its release could force the monarchy to confront uncomfortable questions about how she was treated in the 1980s and 1990s. Such a message would shake the institution from inside out. As theories spread through Britain, the media exploded with analysis, debate, and emotion. But the outside storm was nothing compared to what was happening inside the palace walls. To understand the full impact, we now move into Section 7, the moment the world reacted, and the monarchy felt the pressure tighten. Media eruption. The footage of King Charles freezing mid-speech spread online within 36 hours, quickly becoming one of the most watched royal clips since 1997. At 9:14 a.m., the first slowed video emerged on social platforms showing the exact moment he saw Diana's name. Within 12 hours, the clip gained over 8 million views, prompting global conversations. By evening, major networks in the UK, US, and Australia aired emergency panels debating what the envelope might contain. The world had seen Charles break and needed answers. Newspapers reacted fiercely by the next morning. One headline read, "The letter that stopped the king," while another declared, "Diana speaks again after 28 years." Analysts replayed the freeze frame multiple times, pointing out his trembling hand and the 25-second silence. Experts compared the handwriting to known letters from 1992, 1995, and 1996, confirming the script matched Diana's natural writing style. Even people who rarely engaged with royal news found themselves drawn into the unfolding mystery. Public sympathy surged toward Diana. On social media, fans reposted clips from her 1995 Panorama interview, connecting her warnings then to the resurfaced letter now. Memes, essays, and emotional tributes multiplied. One commentator said, "It's as if Diana has spoken across 28 years, delivering a message only Charles can understand." The sentiment spread worldwide, uniting generations who remembered her impact, and younger people discovering her story for the first time. Outside pressure was explosive, but inside the palace, the fallout was far more personal. The letter didn't just shake the king, it fractured relationships, raised suspicions, and reopened wounds. To understand the depth of the crisis, we must now examine how the royal family reacted behind closed doors. Royal family torn apart. Prince William learned about the letter within 20 minutes of the event ending. At 3:10 p.m., an aide rushed into Kensington Palace, explaining what happened. William's face reportedly shifted from confusion to urgency. As Diana's son, only 15 years old when she died in 1997, the idea of a final message rattled him deeply. He immediately demanded to see the letter, insisting, "If this is from Mum, I have a right to know." His reaction revealed decades of unresolved grief. Queen Camilla, however, reacted defensively. Sources say she called an emergency meeting at 3:35 p.m. with her advisors, describing the moment as an ambush. Camilla feared the letter, whether emotional or critical, could threaten the stability she and Charles had built since 2005, especially given the backlash she faced during the 1980s and 1990s. A message from Diana, resurfacing after 28 years, electrified old tensions she hoped were buried. Inside the palace, divisions grew. William pushed for transparency. Camilla pressured Charles to keep the letter private. Harry, informed around 7 a.m. PST, reportedly grew emotional and encouraged William to stand firm. For the first time since 2020, the brothers aligned on something: protecting their mother's legacy. The monarchy, already strained, now faced a deeper internal fracture, one triggered by a message frozen in time for nearly 3 decades. As the palace scrambled internally, historians and experts began recognizing the moment's wider impact. Diana's letter was no longer just a family matter. It had become a historical turning point. To understand why, we must see how this event echoes the past and reshapes the legacy of 1997. Historical shockwave. Historians immediately drew parallels between Charles's reaction and the royal crisis following Diana's death in August 1997. Back then, the monarchy struggled to respond for 10 days, facing public anger not seen since 1936. Now, 28 years later, Diana's sealed letter resurfaced at a moment when Charles least expected it. Experts noted that her voice had returned with the same emotional force it carried in the late 20th century. Unlike in 1997, however, today's world reacted in real time. By 2025, social media dissected every movement, every breath, every tremble from Charles. Handwriting experts compared the envelope to letters from 1992 to 1996. Podcasts dedicated entire episodes to speculating about its contents. Historians pointed out that controlled royal narratives from the early 2000s now faced a threat. Diana's own words, preserved in ink for decades. The world waited. The palace fractured. Historians braced themselves. And one man held the answer. To close this story, we move to the final section, the moment where everything depends on a single decision: whether King Charles opens the letter or hides Diana's voice again. Will Charles reveal the letter or bury it again? Crisis talks began within 24 hours of the event. At 2:15 p.m., senior advisors met with King Charles to discuss 3 options: open the letter privately, release it publicly, or return it to the archive. One advisor warned that its contents could create a 1997-level emotional wave. Another insisted the letter was family only. Charles listened silently, staring at the envelope that had haunted him for 28 years. Prince William demanded transparency. He reminded advisors that he was 15 years old when Diana died in 1997, and that any message from her mattered as much to him as it did to Charles. Queen Camilla, however, urged a private reading, fearing renewed comparisons to the painful events of the 1980s and 1990s. Her concern was clear. A message from Diana could reopen wounds she spent 20 years trying to heal alongside Charles. Diana's hidden note didn't just stop a king. It shattered the palace's silence. Now Charles must choose: reveal the truth or bury it again. The world waits. William demands answers, and Anne stands firm. One envelope, 28 years old, now threatens to rewrite royal history forever.